MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jin Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. Welcome back to the show, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
The Federal Court of Appeal today ruling that the National Energy Board has to rehear concerns about the Kinder Morgan pipeline. They're saying that adequate consultation with First Nations did not take place. This is the first court ruling that's gone against the pipeline, isn't it?
It is, and I think there's a couple of important things to note about it. First of all, this is not a repudiation of the work of the company itself. In fact, I think in 17 cases where the company's process, how it's interacted with First Nations have been examined, it's won every single one of those. This is very much a case of the court saying government, the bureaucracy and the politicians, the federal cabinet, they failed to consider certain things. So, for the company who's getting, getting the gears a little bit here today, they just, went about it, made an application out of the process as it was set out, as convoluted as it was. They met every threshold. The problem is the politicians and bureaucrats who were making that process have really let people down.
This court ruling doesn't affect the sale of Kinder Morgan to the federal government, does it?
No, in fact, I think the shareholders had a meeting, Kinder Morgan shareholders had a meeting within minutes of it, coincidentally, and approved the sale. So what it does affect is probably the value of that pipeline. How long is it going to take for the federal government to do the two things that the courts have ordered them to do? How quickly can they do that and get this project back on track? That will be a costly question for Canadians.
The National Energy Board did not allow the public into its so-called public hearings in Vancouver. Was that a red flag?
I don't know if it was a red flag, but I mean, look, you obviously want to have as broad a base discussion as possible. You want get as many people, hear as many voices as possible. But look, it really was the courts. It really was the government that let them down. I mean, these guys did everything they could. They did everything right. 30,000 points of contact with First Nations peoples. But in the end, the court said that was great, but cabinet needed to consult on these things, and the NEB needed to consider shipping lanes as well. So that is no fault of Kinder Morgan. They certainly played within the rules they were given.
Is it frustrating for business when you have so many things to jump over before you get a project going? I mean, not just this, but in general.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This is a big concern, and this is the bigger concern that we should be talking about as a country is at a time when the United States is really changing the way it does business, we're making it harder and harder for people to build things in British Columbia specifically and in Canada in general. So, the big winners today, probably Washington State, the United States government. They're big winners today. The rest of us have kind of lost out on a lot of jobs and yet another delay and probably a very expensive one for taxpayers who now own this project.
What kind of discouraging things could this bring to business in BC?
Well, I think it's another sign to people that, BC is not a great place to do business. That Canada is not a place that can be trusted in its processes. Look, if you had a bag of money and you wanted to invest it somewhere in a resource business, why on earth would you come to Canada? Like, it's expensive. It doesn't, it's not respected. You take a lot of grief for what you want to do. And then the process the government sets out is flawed. I mean, like I said, these guys did everything right, followed the process perfectly, and it turns out it wasn't their fault this thing isn't being built. It was government's fault. Government couldn't get the process right. So that's very frustrating for people, and I think it's a big concern to a lot of folks.
They were starting to build the pipeline. 95% of it was approved for construction. What does this do to BC businesses that were going to take part in that?
Well, it's a kick in the gut, that's for sure. I mean, this could take months or years, who knows, to unpack and to fix. You know, I do think the project will eventually go ahead. I mean, it's too vital to the national economy and too important to get this resource to Tidewater safely. We have to do it. So, but now it's just gotten more expensive and more problematic.
Do you see Ottawa making changes to the regulations or to the law to smooth this thing over?
Well, they do need to make some changes. The question is, you know, they have to meet a standard that the courts now have them put on them. So that will be the interesting question, is like, how quickly can they turn around and do this? And you know, what are they going to do? What will the court's view of First Nations who are just outright obstructionists? What's that view going to be? I mean, you can talk to certain groups till you're blue in the face. They will never, ever agree to this pipeline. So the question becomes, the question becomes, what are we doing this for if we can never get agreement on it? So that will be an interesting threshold for them to meet. And, government has many, many very expensive lawyers who make big bucks trying to figure this stuff out. And if you're looking for a good business to invest in, that might be one, because you can bet that they'll be busy.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after the break.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE, symbol CRL, and the Pink, symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
Bateman Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the Pink, symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Bateman's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at batemanresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, do the independent contractors have a court case of their own that has to do with construction?
Yeah, so we're taking the BC government to court over what they call community benefit agreements, but what the rest of the world calls project labor agreements. This is that weird rule that the NDP and their major funding partners, the BC building trades unions, hatched in the background to cut 85% of BC's construction workers out of being able to bid on projects like the Patello Bridge. And what their plan is to force anyone who works on the Patello Bridge to become a full-fledged member of the BC building trades unions. These are a group of 19 unions who have given the BC NDP about $2.5 million over the past decade in donations and countless more dollars in time and energy. And it's a way to reward them and, give them, frankly, access to millions, maybe tens of millions of dollars, in union dues and other things. So, 85% of the construction market right now, is effectively being cut out of the opportunity to bid on these projects. And we're going to court with a number of other associations, including the BC Construction Association, which has both, labor and or both building trades companies and our own open shop companies, CLAC, which is its own union, the CWU is a union, a number of private individuals who don't want to join building trades unions but want to work on projects like this. It's a huge group of business, labor, and workers going to court saying we need this overturned.
What's the basis of this court challenge?
Well, freedom of association. So there's a number of rules that are going to be, and other laws are going to be disobeyed. The most fundamental one is, a person's right to decide how they want to organize themselves in a workplace, freedom of association. So no one should be able to hold a gun to anyone's head and say, you must join a union in order to do work. We think that's a fundamental right that you should be able to associate or not associate as you see fit. We also have many companies who have other kind of employee representation groups, whether it's a more progressive union such as CLAC, whether it's an employee association, whether it's a profit-sharing association. They all have different kind of ways that they're constituted. Now we're saying, how you workers wanted to organize yourselves, how you voted and worked hard to do that no longer matters. You now have to be part of this very narrow building trades union model in order to do this work. We think there's a very reasonable case there. Courts are, as we've seen today, notoriously unpredictable, but we think there's a good case to be made for the workers who want to do this project but don't want to be part of the building trades.
If the law stands up that all of the construction has to be 100% building trades union members, what would that cost the taxpayer?
Well, the very conservative estimate given by the transportation minister herself is 7% on projects. We think it's more like 20 to 30%. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business has done some independent analysis with figures in that range. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars on projects. And what it means is less money to build other things. So, for example, the $1.4 billion Patello Bridge project, let's say it's only 10% more cost. And we should know it's not 10% because of the labor cost per se. It's 10% because of all the finicky rules, the bureaucracy, the payouts to the union bosses, so that they can run their little operations. That's what actually drives up the cost. You lose all the kind of efficiencies of crews that have worked together for many years, who understand each other, who have expertise in these things, and you lose the ability to frankly pit companies against each other in the bidding process to get costs down and find efficiencies. When you give one group a monopoly, you get rid of all those kind of cost pressures that help keep costs down. So, a 10% increase on a $1.4 billion project is $140 million. That's two new high schools. That's several. It's probably 7 elementary schools in Surrey that you can't build because you've spent this money simply feathering the nest of your old union supporters. It's pretty disgusting, and frankly, it's such old school, nonsensical 1990s NDP dogma. We can't even believe that they've revived it. The market's changed so much since the 90s when this was the last time this sort of forced unionization was tried. Back then, construction was maybe 50-50 between the building trades and open shop. Now it's 85-15 for the open shop, and this really seems like the Hail Mary to their trade unionist movement trying to save them from complete oblivion within a generation.
Have there been court rulings that have said you can't force somebody to pay union dues?
There's all sorts. Court rulings are all over the map on this. The building trades union cites some work with Manitoba Hydro. There's some big differences between what's happened there and what's happened here. But look, when you get into court, you never know. So we'll make our case as best we can, and we're hopeful. We're optimistic about it, but we do know this is a fight for the long haul. Frankly, what would be quicker would be for the Green Party of BC to stand up for some of its principles once in a while, defeat this government, send us to the polls, and let's sort this out through an election.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. Work programs are underway in Finland and planned for Canada this summer. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol ADD, on Frankfurt symbol 82A1, and the OTCQB symbol ASDZF. Please visit our website arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, with the NAFTA talks now on the brink of a Friday deadline imposed by President Trump, how does NAFTA affect your association?
Trade's of huge importance to the construction industry because there's materials that go back and forth across the border all the time, whether it's steel or rebar, whether it's wood, whether, just tons of things that go back and forth. NAFTA has really made North America's economy more integrated than ever before. And I think that's why you saw even a notorious anti-free trader like Donald Trump finally cut a deal with Mexico. Even he realizes that the economy depends on this kind of ability to send things back and forth across borders. And certainly Canada, just as important to the United States as Mexico is. So, yeah, vitally important to the construction industry. We have enough cost drivers right now, whether it's the NDP's crazy tax increases, whether it's the NDP's forced unionization. Taxpayers are already on the hook for a lot of things. Anything we can do to try to mitigate some of these construction costs, let's do it. Right now we're trending towards having to pay more for all sorts of supplies to build things.
Are steel tariffs the biggest bugaboo for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's unreal. We just do not have the kind of steel supply in Western Canada. We have one small steel mill in Edmonton that could supply about, if we took every inch that it can supply, maybe 10-15% of the Lower Mainland's need for steel in a year. When you're thinking about the Site C Dam, when you think about all these highway projects, when you think about the condos, all these things are undergirded by steel. So we have to have access both to the U.S. and to the Asian and Turkish markets in order to get steel here into the West Coast. Unbelievably, it's 4.5 times cheaper to get steel from the West Coast of the United States or from Turkey and Asia than it is to ship it from back east from the Hamilton steel mills. So we need to make sure that steel is flowing in and out of Canada properly because the Eastern Canadians depend on it, selling it to the Americans. We depend on it, buying it from the Americans on the West Coast.
How damaging has BC's carbon tax been to business?
Carbon tax isn't great. The funny thing about the carbon tax is that everyone thinks it's sort of baked into the economy now. It doesn't matter. I would disagree with that. I think we're seeing a lot of pressure to become more competitive in our tax regime. And, Justin Trudeau and John Horgan have taken us the other way. And you look at what the Americans are doing, even Washington State, a very green, probably, you talk to a lot of British Columbians, they'd probably feel more like, closer to Washington State type people than they do to Ontario type people. And yet, Washington State, still no carbon tax, much lower tax regime, very competitive for business. We are not that. And so, it's just another one of those costs that people have to factor in when they're looking for a place to do business. And it doesn't reflect well on Canada that we've done this. If Ontario and Alberta, under Jason Kenney, presuming he becomes the next premier, as it appears he will, if they're successful in their attempt to overturn Justin Trudeau's forced carbon tax mandate in court, that will be a very interesting moment for whoever is in power in British Columbia, because for a long time, we pride ourselves on having a carbon tax that made us a leader in this, but leaders have to have followers, and eventually, if the rest of the world rejects carbon taxes or the rest of Canada rejects carbon taxes, BC is going to have to reflect upon that and whether it's worth it, whether it's worth continuing punishing ourselves just to have moral high ground when it doesn't do anything to actually affect the climate in any way.
Is there any evidence that carbon taxes have reduced the consumption of fossil fuels?
No. The only time that carbon emissions went down in BC was during the 2008 global recession. We do not want to go back to those days. Think of the unemployment, think of the massive deficits, think of all the problems that were going on then. So that's what has affected our greenhouse gas emissions, nothing else. And in fact, this is one of the key pieces of legislation coming this fall from the NDP is what will be in their climate change strategy. What will George Heyman, a former executive director and true believer of the Sierra Club, put in that? Is it going to be even more punitive and restrictive and unfair to resource companies? We're going to have to wait and see. Will the Green Party actually agree to give credit to, for example, LNG if it comes on stream and takes coal power offline in China? Will they actually give us credit for reducing those global emissions, or will they continue with their, pretending that nothing outside BC's borders seem to matter?
Well, it sounds like they'd like to see the Chinese go back to riding bicycles rather than driving cars.
Exactly, and that's not really fair to the Chinese middle class, There's so many different issues and problems going on right now, and we need to really focus on the important things that help our folks.
What could the government be doing right now to make BC business more competitive?
Well, cut taxes, cut red tape, make processes quicker, and when government gives you their word that they are on board or approved a project, actually expediting those approvals and seeing things built. All of those things have eroded confidence in Canada right now. It is not a great time to be going into business in this province.
Jordan, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks, and I hope I didn't depress all of your listeners too much.
My guest has been Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. His website, icba.ca. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Comments or questions can be sent to info@housestreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.